some Lee's chicken. Haven't had Lee's chicken in a long time. It's been almost 6 months, I think, since I've had Lee's chicken. Lots of chicken. Look at that. Lots of fries. Got some gravy. Oh, there's lots of chicken there. Wow, look at that. Wow, they gave me 4 pieces. I asked for 3, they gave me 4. And there's my biscuit. Lots of fries. Wow. That's a lot of fries. And coleslaw. Oh, that's my gravy. I guess this is my beans. Okay, so this is my beans. Oh, nice and warm too. No, that's my gravy. Okay. They all kind of look the same, so this is my beans. There's my beans. Okay. Now, let's do this right here. Wow, I got a lot of chicken here. I gotta rearrange my chicken. Look at that. Okay, let's put that coleslaw on top there. There's my coleslaw. I'll just put some on there for now. There's my beans on top of the coleslaw. Can you see that? Fries, coleslaw, beans, and some gravy on there over top of the whole thing. A little bit on the chicken. Oh, that's good. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Mark, is that a Canadian thing? No, my friends, it's not a Canadian thing. That's a Mark thing. I like mixing all my food. The way I look at it, what goes in my mouth goes to the same place. Gets mixed around and comes out. Well, I think you know what I'm trying to say. Anyways, it all goes to the same place. Oh man, look how crispy this is. The spicy extra crispy. Oh wow. That's a lot of food. Anyways, I'm begging out. So, like I said, I hadn't been to Lee's Chicken since going on 6 months now. When I was a kid, I'd take all my mashed potatoes, put them on the plate, put my coleslaw on top of my salad, my vegetables, and then the gravy, and you get a forkful and everything's on there. Some people don't like their vegetables touching. They don't like their meat touching their veg or their gravy touching their potatoes or whatever, right? I'm not like that. No, I like mixing everything together. I guess I'm kind of badass that way. Anyways, I hope you're comfortable because I have an epic story for you. So if you got your headphones on, your earbuds or whatever, sit back, lie back. Before I go too far, I gotta shut up. Al_Cash. Lloyd's been a subscriber to my channel for a long time. I think almost right from the beginning. Like a lot of you. Very supportive. So a big shout out to Lloyd, Al_Cash, and a big shout out to the rest of you as well. I'm coming up to 20,000 subscribers, and I got all you people to thank for that. I'm just glad that you people recently did a video on MTV. Took place in 1982. How old was I? 25. Oh, I turned 25. In the spring of 82. Oh, it's a real potpourri of flavors. Now in 1982, my girlfriend that time, who would later become my fiance, who would later become my wife, who would become the mother of my children, and eventually my ex-wife. We had finished the chef training course, which is where we met. We started living together in 81. In the summer of 81, we rented a big house. I made a video about that. I'll try to post a link in my description box. But we were all living there. A few of us. As time went on, more and more people were living there. Got to a point it was like a party house. So around Christmas time or so, I think it was probably just after Christmas, we moved out. Rented a one-bedroom apartment in a high-rise, 12th floor. Beautiful view. So anyway, we were living in this high-rise. Need a drink. This is the first pop I've had in a long time. It's a Dr. Pepper in a Pepsi container. So we were renting this high-rise, and it was nice living there, but when I finished the cook training course, I bummed around for a couple of weeks and decided I need to get a job. So my girlfriend and I, at that time, found jobs right away. I got a cook's job at a restaurant for $6 an hour. She got a job in a bakery for $4 an hour. Not that I was working. I was dying to buy a drum kit. I drove by a music store one day. There's a beautiful set of pearl drums in the window. Almost drove off the road. When I saw them, I had to have them. So I borrowed $2,500 and bought them. Had no place to set them up and play them because I was in an apartment. So I set them up at my buddy's house. But he was a real partier. People always coming over. And I wanted to play my drums anytime I wanted. I thought the only way to get around that is to move out of the apartment and get a house. This restaurant always gives you lots of fries. Can't believe the bonus piece of chicken. looking for a house. Looked at a few places, found a real nice old one we liked. The guys that owned it were a couple of brothers, a couple of older gentlemen. They liked us. They'd have been more than happy to rent to us. But it wasn't quite what we wanted. We hoped to find something with a finished basement. We kept on looking. Man, that's good chicken. We kept on looking. We found a perfect house. It's a cracker box style house, probably built in the early 70s. Had 2 bedrooms up. Had a 3/4 basement finished. Had a couple rooms downstairs. One the size of a den, one a little bit bigger. The one that was bigger is where I set my drums up, and that's where we would jam and practice and all that. Oh, that's noisy. Sorry about that. Don't know why that was so noisy. So we got this house. The landlord lived way up north. He was worked in a mining operation or something. I met him once when he came down, just a young fella, nice guy. So we moved in. I could walk to work, it was that close to my work, but my ex had to drive, so she would always take the car. Now, if you're standing in the house, in the living room, looking out the window at the street, across the street was a house where a mother and her daughter lived. The daughter was about our age, maybe a little bit younger. We'd eventually get to know her and have her over for our get-togethers and parties. And next door to them, on the left side, were an older couple, retired couple. Oops, there goes a bean. Named Elsie, Carl and Elsie. Their fries always stick together. Keep more slaw there. They're good beans. Really good beans. A little more gravy. So Carl and Elsie had been living on that street since the 50s. So, and their house was a bit older, probably built in the 40s or 50s. I went over there one day. Can't remember why. But they had patio lanterns in the backyard, and everything was neat and cozy and really nice and that sort of thing. No, they were nice people. To your face. Always nice to your face. They always gossip behind your back. And they kind of gave the impression that because they've been on that street for years, apparently when they moved in, there's hardly any houses on that street. Elsie found out, my girlfriend that time, we're getting married, she told the people across the street, oh well, I give him 6 months. Well, we actually lasted 26 years. Gotta try this biscuit. Biscuits and gravy. Now I remember Carl was one of these guys, he'd come over. Always kind of opinionated, always nosing around. Like I said, he's always pleasant and everything, but always crack a lot of stupid jokes. A bit racist and bigoted for my liking, but always try and see the good in people. But I remember when he would talk to you, he would always lean in right to your face. They'd always lean in. And he had this ginormous teeth. He had teeth like a horse. It was unbelievable. I can take that straw out of there. It's too noisy. I don't know why that straw is so noisy. It's actually not the straw, it's a plastic thing on there. Okay, so anyways, that's kind of how he was, He had these big, huge teeth. But he's a nice guy. Knew everybody's business. Now, once again, facing the street or to our right was an elderly lady named Margaret. Margaret was a lovely woman, funny. She too was very opinionated, and she didn't mind expressing it, but she was funny. Not the least bit shy. At that time, I think she was in her late 70s, early 80s. She was from Wales. So anyways, at one point she went back to Wales for a visit when we were living there. And she was telling us all about it. Now where the story begins is to the left of us were Gord and Anne. Gordon and Anne. So if you're standing on the street looking at my house, they were to our right. Now how they got their house, they had an older home. How they acquired it was interesting. They bought it for $1. There were a bunch of houses slated to be demolished. And they had, the deal was you had to move it out of there. You could buy it for $1. But you had to move it out of there within 90 days or so. I can't remember what the deal was. So they bought this house for $1. Hired this house moving company called Nickel Brothers. Now Nickel Brothers, I first heard of them back in the 70s. And they'd been around for a long time then. And the logging company I worked at, they were moving bunkhouses in and out of there, that kind of stuff, right? So they could move anything. They could move a skyscraper, I'm sure. They would move things by barge, flatbed, 2 flatbeds together, coming down the street. They have to disconnect all the power lines, but they'd get it done. They're very well known all through the province. They're not some little jibbo outfit, they're a big outfit. They know what they're doing. this house moved onto their property. Now, they had to have the foundation built for them. That probably cost a few bucks. Not sure how much, but back then your average house went between $50,000 and $60,000 for a house like that. So if it cost $10,000 to move the house, let's say it cost a few more grand to have the foundation put in and inspect and all that. They got a good deal. So I'll tell you how I first met them. Now, the people that lived in the house before we did, who were renting the house before we moved in, were some of the local Hells Angels and a bunch of bikers and stuff. Gord later told me that they were. He went there one time. They had a Harley Davidson in the living room that they were tearing down and putting back together. So anyway, about a week after we'd moved in, we'd only been there maybe a week or less. We were having a big jam session, big party. And of course, we're all downstairs in the jam room, jamming away. At one point, rather than went upstairs to have a pee, I decided just to go out the basement door, which led to the backyard. It's pitch black. I step out there, just about to pee, and I hear my girlfriend say, "Hey, Mark, come on over." I hear another voice. It's a man's voice. Says, "Yeah, come over and meet your new neighbors." Oh, I'm pretty good. So I walk over there, and I felt embarrassed about this for months. But I remember I knew that I had too much to drink. I go over and meet them, and I could hear myself slurring my speech. And I'm bobbing and weaving, and they're just kind of acting like, it's no big deal, like kind of like they didn't notice. But they're very nice people. Now, Gord and Ann were probably in their late 30s. Gord might have been 40 at the I would say probably 38 thereabouts. They're both kind of like that. And I would describe them as very back to earth, hippie types. Now, when I say hippie, I don't mean this as a derogatory comment. I'm not labeling anybody. I'm just trying to paint you a picture. So, now when I say hippie, I mean Anne would always wear those thin, sort of balloon type pants you see a lot of, people wearing at a hippie fair, a music festival or something. Very almost sort of see-through type thing, and always had braids in her hair and flowers, and a very nice woman. Oh, Gord. They both embraced the whole hippie culture, the whole back to earth, the whole ideology, They both embraced that. Anne looked the part, but Gord didn't. I've never met a person my whole life whose looks belied his character and personality so much. He always dressed in a green work shirt and green pants or khaki or something. He looked like he'd be a foreman on a construction crew or something. So it was kind of weird, because they both really embraced the whole hippie culture way of life, but he didn't look the part at all. I remember the band Cheap Trick, when they first came to notoriety, their drummer. You remember how he looked so different than a couple of the other guys? I'm not talking about Rick Nielsen, but the drummer looked so different. And Gord just told me about this guy. He said, have you seen the drummer for that band? He really liked his look. And I think that's because the drummer didn't look like a rock star. And I think Gord kind of got off on people that looked different than how they actually were, or you know what I mean? Because he was that way himself. No, Gord hated to work. The whole time I knew him, he never worked. One time I was at his place and he was telling me that a friend of his had dropped over, and he was saying, hey Gord, I got a job up north, working somewhere, I don't know, fishing or something, and he'd be gone for about 3 weeks at a time. He'd come home for a week, go for 3 weeks, making, huge money. And Gord said, to me, that'd be like a jail sentence. They both really shunned work. So Gord would be at our place quite often. He'd come over and visit in the morning for coffee or tea on my days off. We'd go visit them. And I remember going to their house. They had their house, it was like a 2-story. I was never down in the basement, but you had to go upstairs. It was an older home. Nice front porch. But their house and our house, the main floor was actually the second floor. And went over there. And back in those days, the first thing I would do, a lot of people do this, is you see the record collection. So you kneel down in front of the record collection, you check out their vinyl, I always felt I could tell something about a person by the kind of music they listen to. I mean, if they're listening to Pink Floyd, they're probably my kind of person, but if they're listening to the Archies, probably not. So anyway, gotta get all this juicy tidbits in here. So anyway, I'm looking at his record collection. They got, a lot of Leonard Cohen, Joni Mitchell, Joan Baez, Grateful Dead, John Prine, Electric String Band, incredible string band, incredible string band. And he had this Hank Williams record. It's a double album set. all of Hank's recordings on there. Well, his well-known recordings and others. I was always interested in recordings, how recordings are made. And he said, well, you can borrow that if you like. Now, of course, I'd heard of Hank Williams, Your Cheating Heart, etc., but never really listened to that much of him. So I borrowed the record. Like I said, it was a double album set, and I listened to it a lot. But that day we were over there, they had bought this record by Yoko Ono. It was her brand new record called Seasons of Glass. Now, I had never listened to a Yoko Ono recording, but I'd seen her on TV. You can see her on YouTube and, doing all that screaming and caterwauling and everything. I'm sure she's a very talented woman. I don't doubt that for a minute. But all I'm saying is I'd never listened to her music. So they had this record. Called Seasons of Glass, and they were playing it. And it was actually quite pleasant music. I mean, it's not nothing that I would buy, but we could hear in the background, certainly pleasant and everything. Kind of nice. So anyways, I took note of a lot of his records, and I would always, Gord never seemed to have any pot of his own, but I always did, so I'd always smoke him up, and he liked that. We'd have a cup of tea, and we'd go home. So like I said, we got to know them quite well. Now, Anne had been married once before to this other guy. And they had I think a 12-year-old boy at some point, but he lived with his dad. So one day I go over and knock on the door. I say, come in. So I go in there. They're in the back of the kitchen. So I go back there. And they're all sitting in the kitchen. Gord and Ann and her ex-husband. They introduced me. So they had a nice little kitchen, by the way. So we're just sitting there talking, and first thing I noticed was he didn't seem like the type that would be Ann's ex-husband. I mean, Gord and Ann seemed like a perfect match, but this guy did not seem like a match for Ann at all. She was quite sort of flamboyant, easygoing, laid back, and he was kind of the opposite. Nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying that seemed like a mismatch. Which is why I guess they weren't together anymore. But he was sitting there talking about a business venture that he was starting, him and this other guy. And when he found out I was into food, like I just taken the chef course, he wanted to tell me about it. He was telling Gordon, and he kind of wanted my opinion. But the business was a pizza business. Now, pizza businesses are a dime a dozen, let's be honest, but this one was different in the sense that he would have a small little restaurant, like a hole in the wall somewhere, takeout and delivery only. And he wouldn't have any ovens. If you ordered pizza, he'd make up the pizza, have all the toppings, everything, all the dough inside you want, he'd make the pizza up. But you'd take it home and bake in your own oven. Well, it seemed like an interesting concept, but of course, as time went on, I looked at it more. I mean, it had a lot of flaws and a lot of holes in it. But he was convinced that this was a great idea. wonder why somebody want to do that. I can only speak for myself. When I order a pizza, I want it for the convenience. I want to get the sucker home and eat as fast as I can. I don't want to sit there and put it in my oven and wait. And little kids don't want to wait. Teenagers don't want to wait. You want that pizza now, and especially if you've been cooking all day. You don't want to. I mean, you want that pizza because it's convenient. It's already done. And on a hot day, you don't want to be using your oven. And let's say you have a small get-together, like a little party. You want 3 or 4 pizzas. Well, you can't fit 3 or 4 pizzas into your average oven. 2 maybe. So, but he thought this was the perfect business venture. So, now at one point, I think Gord said, well, you can buy frozen pizzas. Now, I have to admit, frozen pizzas have come a long way. In 1982, frozen pizzas were terrible. The crust was hard, thick, tasted like baking powder, like a baking powder biscuit type thing. The toppings were always kind of sparse and, they weren't very good. Yeah, they were cheaper, but it took a long time for frozen pizza to come around. Now you can get some fabulous ones. Really good. But back then you couldn't. So, I could see why nobody would want to buy a frozen pizza. They didn't have to. So, his idea was get himself a little restaurant, wouldn't need any ovens, that still need a cooler and probably a freezer, and equipment to make the dough and everything else. Have to buy all the produce. Well, by the time you do that, and you have to saran each one with saran wrap, regular pizza in a box, set them out with this one's, because nothing's cooked, it's all loose, you have to saran it and put it in a box. That's going to bring up your cost right there, because you have to do all that. I don't think the customer, you'd be able to give to them that much cheaper than a cooked one. Like sure you have to buy the ovens, but and whether it's gas or electricity, I don't think they would have had a wood fire one, but either gas or electricity, I don't think they're going to be saving a whole lot of money by not cooking the pizzas. And I just couldn't see how that would be a viable operation. I couldn't see it. No, I didn't tell them that because at that point I hadn't thought about that long. It seemed kind of interesting. But I didn't want to, be the one to rain on his parade or be on his rug, But he was convinced he had a gold mine on his hands, and they were going to open their first restaurant in town within a short time. Open a second one. Open one in Vancouver, Edmonton, Calgary. His plan was to arrive in Montreal within 2 years. I remember Anna just nodding her head saying, oh, that's nice. Now, eventually I went home. That was the only time I ever met her ex-husband. I kept my ear to the ground for years after that. I kept my eye open for this non-cooked pizza business to spring up somewhere, and I never saw it. I never heard about it since. It was nice that he had a dream, but I think at some point he must have come to realize that it just wasn't viable. I mean, I talked to my ex about it at the time, and I've talked to different people over the years. And nobody really agreed that was pretty. It would seem like a good idea at first, because you'd have that sort of niche, that niche market, but person around town. He's actually on Wikipedia. You could Google his name. By the way, till I do the video before I give you more information. But he used to come around and visit Gord and Ann. I could know him on my own terms. But him and Gord decided they wanted to act in a play. One of the local theater companies was doing The Merchant of Venice, Shakespeare play. And so they decided they wanted to be in this play, and Gord was going to have the role of Antonio, and Tim would have the role of Shylock. So they were in this play, and they were practicing all the time, and rehearsing, and this is actually quite a respectable theater group. So the play opened, and the next day I saw in the paper it got really good reviews. They praised Gord's performance, everybody else. So anyways, my ex and I decided we wanted to go see this play, so we went and saw it, and I was really impressed. I really was. I mean, Gord was very convincing. I have to admit, I was not only surprised, I was actually shocked at how good an actor he was, and with Tim and everybody else. It was very good. The whole theater company did a very good job. And I'm not a Shakespeare fan, but I really enjoyed it. So that was it. So I thought it was kind of funny that Gord he'd try out for the soccer team, and he would act in a play. Clearly he was talented, but he just didn't seem to like to work. So anyways, we're getting into the fall, and Gord and Ann, they had to become involved with this group of people who wanted to do a Thanksgiving dinner for the less fortunate and the homeless and whatever. Now in Canada we celebrate Thanksgiving in October. I know the United States and other countries might celebrate it in November or whenever, but we celebrate in October. Not sure why, we just do. So anyways, the idea was that we would all cook turkeys at our own house, and then we'd all take our turkeys down to this hall and feed everybody. So a bunch of people did that. We got a turkey. I can't remember if we paid for the turkey ourselves or if we got reimbursed for it, but anyways, we cooked the turkey in our oven along with the stuffing. They all wanted to have the same stuffing. We had this recipe to follow. We did that, and a whole bunch of us took our turkeys down to this hall, fed everybody. Had yams and mashed potatoes, gravy, pumpkin pie, and turkey, and it was a great evening. Nobody got food poisoning. It was just wonderful. Everybody was so grateful. And they had this a children's entertainer. He's a magician. He was really good. He was like 6'2" and about 250 pounds, and very good at what he does. Very good with children, and very good magician. I only saw him that one time, but he was really good. So it was a great evening. We all came away feeling really good about ourselves and that sort of thing, so it was wonderful. So it was one day I come home from work, and it's probably around November by this point. Nice November sunny day, and I pull up my driveway, and Gord's on his front lawn, sitting on a chair, smoking a cigarette with this real intent look on his face. I say, "Hey, Gord, what's up?" He said, "Well, just trying to figure out a way to get out of here." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, he was tired of living in town on that street, and him and Ann had some friends who lived on one of the smaller islands. Now, Vancouver Island is surrounded by smaller islands, and some of these islands you can live there in a lean-to or an A-frame or a treehouse. The rules are a lot different there, so he kind of wanted that lifestyle. Now, the street we lived on was just your average street. I mean, there was a corner store and a school nearby, and it wasn't overly busy, but he just didn't like your average street with all the houses, and he said, I got Carl Nelsie across the street from me, and blah, blah, blah. I guess he just wasn't real happy where he was living, so he was trying to find a way to get out, and the market was kind of sluggish at the time, so he wasn't sure if he could sell. So that conversation kind of stuck with me. So Christmas comes along, and Christmas goes. I guess we're sometime into around February now, so it's February, This one night we're having this big jam session downstairs. So I take a break and I come upstairs to get something. And I'm in the kitchen. And I thought I could hear glass breaking. Now this is where the story starts to get a bit interesting. I thought I could hear some glass breaking, like beer bottles or something. That's kind of weird. So I go part the curtains and I look outside. It's pitch black. It's been raining. The street's all slick, you know, like in the movies. It's all wet and kind of reflective. And I thought I could hear some glass or some weird crinkly noise or something weird, right? And then I'm staring at the street. I can sort of see this sort of like a reflection, like Christmas lights or something. And I thought, well, that's weird because Christmas was long over, and Gord and Ann didn't put up lights anyway. Nobody had lights up anymore. It was kind of like a neon light, kind of, you know, like that, sort of in and out. I thought that's weird, so I thought I can investigate this further. So I open up the front door and I look outside and I turn my head to look at Gord and Ann's house. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe it. Wow. I'm stuffed. I'm really stuffed. I've been eating way too much here. Oh man. Okay, so back to the story. Where was I? Is that the end of it? Oh, I know. So I open up the front door and I look outside and I look towards their house and it's like, good Lord, their house is on fire. It's just roaring. The front porch is just burning. So I go running for the phone. Right about then, my ex comes upstairs. She goes, what's wrong? I said, Gord and Ann's house is on fire. She goes, what? She runs out there, looks out the window. So back in those days, we didn't have 911, but we had, you know, I grabbed the phone book. First three numbers are, you know, police, ambulance, fire. I phoned the fire department. And they said, well, somebody already phoned it in, and the truck should be here any second. As soon as she said that, I could hear sirens coming up the street. So I hung up, went out there. Lights flashing. By this time, the crowd started to form. So I ran downstairs, told everybody they got to move their vehicles because the fire department wanted all the vehicles out of the driveway, out of the way. So we move our vehicles, park them down the street. Come back, all the neighbors out there, their house codes, and everyone's watching. And the front of the house is just infernal. You could feel the heat just radiating. So of course they're watering it down with their hoses. They start watering down my house as well to make sure it didn't catch on fire. So they get under control pretty much in no time. It didn't take long. So once the fire was up, they were there looking around. You could see the flashlight, you know, in the darkness on them. They were there for quite a while. So when they were satisfied it was okay, they taped off some yellow tape and somebody stayed there all night. Remember that? They had somebody parked out there in a truck all night. So anyways, the next morning, I'm awakened by the sound of somebody banging on my door. I look out the window, and it's Gord. And he's on my front porch, and he's pacing back and forth. He's, you know, like really dramatic, you know, just pacing back and forth. And I go out to the door, and he almost collapses in my arms. And he's just, you know, he's just distraught and just dramatic. And he says, I need to use your phone. I gotta make some phone calls. Okay, sure enough. So he made some phone calls. And then he says, I guess just what happened. I said, yeah, of course, I live next door. How could I not see him? I said, was anybody here? He goes, no. He says, we weren't home at the time. We were visiting some friends. I thought, oh, thank God for that. You know, wow. So, anyway. You know, long story short, there was a fire in their house. They weren't sure what happened, but they couldn't live there. So I remember in the next few days, I saw them hauling stuff out. You know, mattresses that were just soaked and a lot of smoke and water damage, all this stuff. You know, garbage bags full of stuff. They're just carrying all this crap out. And, you know, stuff was black and charred and water damaged. And just really, the whole house was standing, but just the front of it was pretty much toast. And so anyway, so they had to find a place to live. And so they found a place about a mile and a half away. And they were renting that. So we stopped in to visit them. And we were sitting there, we were talking about the fire a little bit, and they said that, you know, from what they knew, somebody broke in, stole a few items, and then and set fire to the house to cover their tracks, and they just ran away. And that's what happened. So we're sitting there, and I couldn't help but notice that they seemed to have a lot of their own personal belongings. Like, they still had some macrame, and they still had that Afghan, and they had a lot of their records were still there. And I remember sitting there drinking tea and looking at the records. Like, I could see my eyesight was better back then than it is now, but I could see the Leonard Cohen, Hank Williams. I could see all these records there, and they still had lots of books and everything. And it's almost like they knew their house was going to catch fire, so they grabbed a bunch of stuff and took it out beforehand. That's how it looked. Now, I don't know if that's what happened, but I know if I went away for the evening, my house caught fire, I'd probably end up with very little. And their records and everything were right in the living room. They would have suffered a lot of damage, but they showed no damage, so they would have been melted and waterlogged. It was a very bizarre scenario. I don't know whatever became of that. I only saw Gord and Ann once after that. And it was a couple of years later, because I ran into them on this street that I don't normally walk down. I drive down it, but I don't normally walk down it. So it was kind of weird. I was walking down the street, probably coming home from work during the summer. Came face to face with them. I said, "Hey, how many kids you got?" And I said, "1." So this would have been around 85 or 86, because our firstborn was in 85. So this is probably around 86, I'm thinking. So this is the first I've seen them in a few years. They looked the same, Can't remember what they were up to. I wish I'd asked more questions. I wish I remembered more about the conversation, but I only talked to them for a short time, But yeah, it was kind of bizarre, So if you ask me, do I think they torched their own house? What kind of looked that way? I mean, why else would they have all their stuff? I mean, you could say, yeah, they went over the evening to a friend's house and brought all their records with them, because I know a lot of times back in my day, if you went to a party, you'd bring a few records with you. A few, not a whole stack. And all your other personal belongings, So, I mean, I never ever said that out loud to anybody. I never talked to them about it. My ex and I kind of thought it seemed suspicious. Anyway, somebody else bought the house, fixed it up. You never know, there was a fire there, or ever had been one. But that house that we lived in, we would live there a total of about a year and a half. I got down on my knee and proposed to my ex in that house. We were still living there when we got married. Of course, a few months later, we'd move out and buy our own home in the fall of '83. So we lived there about a year, a little more, almost a year and a half. The lady next door, Margaret, passed away when we were there. Shortly after this whole fire incident, she passed away. Because remember, we were driving home. We were going somewhere, and we saw her out there watering her flowers. We waved to her, and she waved back to in her house, go watering her flowers. And about 2 days later, she passed away. And a younger couple moved in. But, yeah. So the neighborhood changed quite a bit real quick. And the people across the street, the young woman, like I said, she came to a few of our gatherings, and then she moved out too. Got a boyfriend and moved out, and her mother was there by herself. But, yeah, it was interesting.